Micah chapter 3. This chapter is focused on those within Israel, the focus of the calling out by the Lord of their sins. Lies or stays with the leaders, the heads of Israel, as well. It speaks to the prophets of Israel. And we have these two group of people, and we've had them mentioned at different times as we've been going through these prophets, and we have it even a little bit in Micah as well. It's been mentioned, but we've seen it a few times here, this theme of the leaders of Israel and the prophets of Israel, those that should have been leading Israel in the right direction. They are the source of a lot of the trouble that's going on here. And it's typical a lot of times, and it's addressed here in the very first verse, and many times those kinds of people, especially those that are very wealthy and leaders of the group, they think that they're exempt from trouble. They think that the rules don't apply to them because they can pay and they can do whatever to get whatever they want. But in the case of the Lord, it doesn't work that way. You can't pay off the Lord. You can't dodge him. You can't have somebody else make him quiet, because he's all powerful and he's just. So let's go ahead and have word of prayer. And then, as I said, it starts with the rulers and the prophets, and then in the second half we see the punishment for them. So let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, and we'll get started. Lord, I thank you that we are able to come here to assemble together. Thank you so much for this people that are here in this church that you planted here, Lord, and that you've sustained, that you have grown, Lord. I pray that you would just guide us as we're studying your word now. Take it and apply it to us. Help us to be receptive to it, attentive to it, Lord. Our time would be fruitful. I ask you to guide and direct me. Let everything be for your honor, glory, and will. In Jesus' name, amen. Starting in verse 1 of chapter 3 of Micah, it says, "And I said, Hear, I pray you, O heads of Jacob, and ye princes of the house of Israel. Is it not for you to know judgment?" He starts it off here addressing the heads of Israel as it refers to them here. And I think it interesting that he refers to them as the heads of Jacob. Something that you kind of see, and I'm not going to say that it's every single time is the case, but there's a lot of times whenever you look at the references, even with Jacob or Israel itself, is a lot of times there's a bit of an indication of what he's doing, that he takes Jacob and referring to the carnal man, and then Israel is referred to spiritual nature, following the Lord. And it's not always the case, but I think here in referencing to them as Jacob instead of Israel may even be an indication to that. But without a doubt, what he's talking about here is not something good, because he says, "Hear, O heads, listen, because I'm telling you something that you need to hear," because he says, "Is it not for you to know judgment?" Oftentimes, people think themselves invincible because of their status. We see it time and time again in all societies. The wealthy, the higher class, those in some type of power, they get away with stuff. It's what happens. Because of their status and who they are, because we as people oftentimes we can be bought, or we use different standards with different people. A lot of times those that are powerful and rich, they just get away with everything. And as we're going to see as well, is it talks about that they were very oppressive, and it's already been mentioned multiple times, the oppressive nature of Israel and those in place of power. And they're doing these things, and they're trying this, but the Lord, even though we are respecters of persons, even though we can be bought off, the Lord can't. The Lord is not a respecter of persons. And by that I mean that the Lord doesn't take into account who you are and give you special set of rules. The rules, what is right and what is wrong, is exactly the same for every single person. It doesn't change. The standard that the Lord has created is held across the board exactly the same to everybody. And so he tells them, he says, the judgment is for you as well. You may be listening to what's going on here. You may be listening to these bad things that are going to take place to Israel. You may be thinking, oh, I'll get away with it. You can't affect me. You can't stop me. Or it won't be as bad for me. I'll be able to escape, or I'll be able to figure out a way with my wealth to get past it. And he says, no, the judgment's for you as well. You're going to receive this, because you're just as guilty as the rest. We see in Hosea and Amos both, the rich had already been called out. And let's go ahead and turn over to Hosea chapter 5, and we'll see a little bit about them. In Hosea chapter 5, verse 1, it's just a few pages over, a few books, small books. Chapter 5, verse 1, it says, hear ye this, O priests, and hearken, ye house of Israel, give ear, O house of the king, for judgment is towards you, because ye have been a snare on Mizpah, and a net spread upon Tabor. We see here, as it was mentioned in Hosea, they were a snare to people. Instead of helping, they were causing problems. They were being the people that, oftentimes whenever it comes to doing things that are wrong, there's a lot of times where it's somebody else that kind of spurs it on or tries to get it going. And this was the case with the leaders, the priests as well. They were instigating the problems. They were instigating the sinning, encouraging it. And if you look over at Amos chapter 4, I want you to remember these Hosea, Amos as well, it's all kind of within a close time. It's not super close, but they're close. And Amos chapter 4 and verse 1 talks specifically about the rich, what they are doing. Amos 4 and 1, it says, hear this word, you kind of Bashan, that are in the mountain of Samaria, which oppress the poor, which crush the needy, which say to their masters, bring, let us drink. Well, we see that their desire, the things that they're doing, they're taking the poor, and that they're crushing them, they're oppressing them, just so that they can have some extra drink for their excitement, for their parties. And kind of going into verse 2, but let's look at Amos chapter 5 and verse 10 first, before we go back to Micah, because it works with the verses they're going to continue to. In Amos chapter 5 and verse 10, it says, they hate him that rebuketh in the gate, they abhor him that speaketh uprightly. For as much therefore as your treading is upon the poor, and ye take from him burdens of wheat, You have built houses of hewn stone, but ye shall not dwell in them. You have planted pleasant vineyards, but ye shall not drink wine of them. For I know your manifold transgressions and your mighty sins. They afflict the just, they take a bribe, they turn aside the poor and the gain from their right. Therefore the prudent shall keep silence in that time, for it is an evil time. Seek good and not evil, that you may live. So the Lord, the God of hosts, shall be with you, as ye have spoken. If we go back over to Micah, we saw there this attitude that they were going in. Back in Amos, it's described here of them oppressing the poor and doing these things, and thinking that they can just pay off people to get to keep doing it. And they can just kind of keep skating on by. And we see that this is again talked about, this evil that's taking place back in Micah chapter 3 and verse 2. It says, who hate the good and love the evil, who pluck off their skin from off them, and their flesh from off their bones, who also eat the flesh of my people, and flay their skin from off them. They break their bones and chop them in pieces as for the pot, and as flesh within the cauldron. What's being described here is it's taking this picture of this using as an illustration and talking about basically being a cannibal, and it's referring to the things that they're doing to these people. The oppression that's taking place is so great that it's like they're stripping them down and they're taking it, and even talks about them, they break their bones and chop them in pieces as for the pot. It's taking the bones themselves and trying to get every little bit that they can out. This is how significant the powerful in Israel were treating those underneath them. Ruining lives, destroying lives, killing them, taking every little bit that they can, no regard for others. The attitude of the people that are here is just to think of it in these terms. And when you do this time again, you think you're going to get free from it. It's something that's very common. Many criminals, they are very successful for a time. They think after a while that they are invincible. But they can't be stopped. They're not going to be stopped. And eventually they get a little bit too arrogant and get caught. Notice here what it says in verse 4 though. It says, then shall they cry unto the Lord, but he will not hear them. He will even hide his face from them at that time, as they have behaved themselves ill in their doings. When the judgment comes, they're going to cry unto the Lord. They're going to want help. They're not going to like what's coming. But because of what they've done, because of the evil that exists within them, the Lord will not respond. Their opportunity to repent has passed. Their opportunity to get right with the Lord, it's too late. They ignored the Lord's call for repentance time and time again as a nation. The leaders themselves ignored the opportunities. Many pass up the opportunity for salvation time and time again. And then in the end, when they get to the end, they've missed all their opportunities to receive the Lord. The Lord won't help. Whenever the end is come, when the judgment comes, it's too late. Now I want us to notice the prophets of Israel and what's taking place. Verse 5 says, "Thus saith the Lord concerning the prophets that make my people err, that bite with their teeth and cry peace, and he that putteth not into their mouths, they even prepare war against him." Yet these prophets, when you think of the prophet, you think it's somebody they got aligned to the Lord. They should be following the Lord, right? They should be doing good. But these prophets, they're not. Instead of leading people to God, they're actually leading people away from the Lord. Instead of speaking the truth, instead of telling the people what they need to hear in order to follow the Lord, they're doing the exact opposite and leading them the other direction. We see here it describes them that bite with their teeth and cry peace. They have evil intentions, but their words, they say peace. They want good. Their words are speaking good, but I want us to notice here as well, it shows their evil within them. He says, "He that putteth not into their mouths, they even prepare war against him." And those that don't go along with the prophets, those that don't agree with them, they go to war against them. They're talking about peace. They're talking about getting along with everybody. They're talking about going with them. But if you stand up against them, those that were standing up against, those that didn't go along with it, those that didn't agree with them, it was war. That's not peace. Publicly, their words were not what was taking place in their lives. He has already described the prophets in chapter 2 and verse 11 of Micah. It says, "If a man walking in the Spirit and falsehood do lie, saying, I will prophesy unto thee of wine and of strong drink, he shall even be the prophet of this people." These prophets, they were just speaking what people wanted to hear. As Paul talks about in the New Testament, he was just tickling their ears. It sounded good. It made them feel good. But it led them away. They were only concerned with being popular. Notice here what their punishment is. In verse 6 it says, "Therefore night shall be unto you, that you shall not have a vision. It shall be dark unto you, that you shall not divine. And the sun shall go down over the prophets, and the day shall be dark over them." What we see here is a description of them. Things are great for them. It's basically where it's being described here as they're able to be in the sunlight, which is a good time for them. It's fun. Things are going great for them. They're in the spotlight. But that's going to end. It's going to be as night for them. They're not going to be in the forefront anymore. They're not going to have these wonderful times. It speaks of them losing their visions. They're experiencing this prosperity now, but it's just going to end. And I want us to see here a little bit more of the visions, because in verse 7 it says, Then shall the seers be ashamed, and the diviners confounded. Yea, they shall all cover their lips, for there is no answer of God. Something about this, the way it's talking about them is them losing their visions and losing their answers from the Lord. These aren't people that were false prophets from the very beginning. These are people that started off following the Lord. They had gifts from the Lord. They had ways that the Lord was using them. But they corrupted it all and used it for their own good. They took the gifts that God had offered to them, the ways that God had blessed them, and they corrupted it. They think everything great, but when the Lord takes away their gifts, they're going to be ashamed. Maybe holding their heads high, they may think that they're great. But it's not. They're going to be nothing. I was here an overall response to the evil that's taking place. Verse 8. We have a little bit of talk here about Micah himself that started. It says, "But truly I am full of power by the Spirit of the Lord, and a judgment and of might to declare unto Jacob his transgression and to Israel his sin." Micah here is a prophet of the Lord. These other prophets, they're going to lose everything they have. The Lord's going to take it all away. But Micah, he is still following the Lord. He still has the power of God. He is full of the Spirit of the Lord and His power. And so he's going to go, while the others are just kind of doing their own thing. They're just saying what people want to hear, and they're doing all this evil stuff. Micah's going to do what they need to know. He's going to say it. He's going to talk about their sin. He has the full power in the message of the Lord. In verse 9, it starts and he says, "Hear this, I pray ye, heads of the house of Jacob and princes of the house of Israel, that abhor judgment and pervert all equity. They build up Zion with blood and Jerusalem with iniquity." We see here that it's again mentioning here that they abhor their judgment. They hate the right things being done. They don't want people to tell them what's wrong. They don't want people to call out their sins. They even pervert equity or pervert what is straight, right. What they do is they've twisted what is right to make it bad. Those that speak out about what is good, those that are good, talking about the righteous, what is righteous, what is correct, they make them to be evil. Those that do the good, they make them to be evil. They flipped everything upside down because of their sin. They want destruction. We see in 10, it describes this evil that they've done. It says they built up Zion with blood and Jerusalem with iniquity. They spilled the blood of so many and done their evil everywhere. This isn't just at the surface of the evil here. The very foundation of their society was based on evil. They built themselves on it. This isn't just you can scratch the surface and you'll find that it's just at the surface. No, it is filtered and spread throughout every single part. There's no foundation of the Lord in any of this. Just evil. Verse 11 says, "The heads thereof judge for reward, and the priests thereof teach for hire. and the prophets thereof divine from money. Yet they will lean upon the Lord and say, Is not the Lord among us? None evil can come upon us. The heads, the leaders that are supposed to make righteous judgments, to solve disputes righteously, justly, they just do it. Whoever can pay them the most. Whoever pays them off, that's the way I'm going. I don't care about what actually happened, just what can you pay me? The priests thereof teach for hire. The messages they give, the lessons they give, whatever the people want, whatever gets them the most money. The prophets, they divine for money. They tell people about what's coming based on what the people want. You know, there's a lot of things within this that describe people that are very much so obsessed with themselves. A lot of things are very common amongst many civilizations that have fallen. What we see here is the Lord takes it very seriously, and the sad thing is, though, they're doing all of this. Everything that drives them is money. Like with their words, they say, will they lean upon the Lord and say, Is not the Lord among us? None evil can come upon us. This shows their arrogance, too, in relation to the Lord. That everything that drives them is themselves and their money, and they say, though, we're with the Lord. Everything they're doing goes against the Lord, but with their words, they're still saying they follow God. Just because somebody says they're following God doesn't mean that the Lord's with them. Just because you use the words that the Lord is going to help you, that the Lord is going to protect you, doesn't mean He's going to. Doesn't matter what you say. From the heart, it's all wrong. Doesn't matter what you say if what you're doing has nothing to do with the Lord. You say nothing can happen to us because we're Israel. The Lord's on our side. Nothing's going to happen. Verse 12. Therefore shall Zion for your sake be plowed as a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps, and the mountain of the house as the high places of the forest. This is because of all the evil that is here. It makes Zion as a plowed field. It's going to take everything, and if you don't know anything about plowing, whenever you plow a field, it takes everything and flips it upside down. Basically, everything starts fresh. There's nothing in a field that's been plowed. It's just gone. Everything's flipped upside down. And he says, in Jerusalem shall become heaps. It's just all going to crumble down. Their city is going to be leveled. We have here destruction. And it speaks of the mountain of the house as the high places in the forest. This is speaking to Mount Moriah, where there was a temple, and eventually it was left and consumed by forests, unable to maintain it anymore. He just left because of the punishment of the Lord. And this serves as all of this does, it serves as a warning. Eventually the Lord's judgments come. Just because things are going smoothly now, just because you associate with this or associate with that, if you reject the Lord and His ways, in the end it doesn't matter. They were a nation, the leaders, the prophets, and they're people that claimed to be God's people, but